Well, welcome to the 700 Club. A crackdown on vaping. The White House taking action to ban flavored e-cigarettes. What's driving the surging epidemic? And why is it killing people? Jenna Browder has more.
The Trump administration is finalizing plans to ban e-cigarettes that are candy and fruit flavored, responding to a recent surge in underage vaping.
Vaping has become a very big business.
With the First Lady by his side, the president made the announcement Wednesday in the Oval Office.
We can't allow people to get sick, and we can't have our youth be so affected. And I'm hearing it, and that's how the First Lady got involved.
The move comes as the CDC investigates hundreds of lung-related illnesses thought to be caused by e-cigarettes. And data shows more than 1 in 4 high school students use e-cigarettes, the majority choosing fruit menthol or mint flavors. At least 6 people have now died.
Data just shows the kids are getting access to these products in spite of our best efforts. We simply have to remove these attractive flavored products from the marketplace.
Parents, teachers, and health advocates have increasingly called for a crackdown on e-cigarettes, arguing they're overwhelmingly to blame for the explosion in underage vaping by teens. Federal health officials have called the vaping trend an epidemic, and they worry teens who vape will eventually start smoking. E-cigarette company Juul says it will comply with any new policy. It argues that its products are meant to wean adult smokers off of regular cigarettes. But this proposed ban casts major uncertainty on that claim. And right now, there's virtually no research on the long-term effects of vaping, so no one knows what the impact could be on a user's health. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. In other news, President Trump is tweeting about a major triumph. His big win, Ephraim Grimm has that.
Pat, the High Court is allowing a new Trump administration asylum policy to go into effect. The rule bans asylum for people trying to enter the U.S. after traveling through another country like Mexico without seeking asylum there first. President Trump tweeted the ruling was a big win. Only Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg dissented from the ruling. The court action allows the Republican administration to impose the new policy everywhere while the court's case goes against it. Federal judges are more and more frequently issuing nationwide injunctions that stop residents or Congress in their tracks and basically decides the importance of issues for the entire country. Paul Strand reports why some see the injunctions as a threat to democracy.
Of the 3 branches of government, the judiciary is the only unelected one, and at times, the most powerful. The Obama administration faced 20 nationwide injunctions over 8 years. President Trump has already been hit with nearly 40. These judges often halt Congress as well, blocking enforcement of federal laws and policies. Attorney General William Barr wants to stop these injunctions. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, shrewd lawyers have learned to shop for a sympathetic judge willing to issue such an injunction. These days, virtually every significant congressional or presidential initiative is enjoined, often within hours, threatening our democratic system and undermining the rule of law. GOP Congressman Steve Scalise told CBN News it provides a judge near total power.
Being a judge does not mean you're a dictator or a czar. Again, you're supposed to be there interpreting the laws that are written and upholding the Constitution. And too often we see a judge that has their own agenda and they try to carry out whatever they want to do as opposed to following what the law says.
And that becomes a real danger if not properly checked, because who will check the checkers?
Jeremy Dice fights for religious freedom through the First Liberty Institute.
If the judges themselves are the ones that are going to decide what the Constitution says, and we limit that to just one individual, that deprives 330 million Americans of the process that we're familiar with under our Constitution.
Used to be Congress would pass a law, the president would sign it, and then it would take effect. Now, if a judge steps in with a nationwide injunction to stop it, the president or lawmakers must slog their way through the entire judiciary.
The average case, I think, to the Supreme Court takes roughly 6 years to percolate up through the system.
As Attorney General Barr states, nationwide injunctions threaten to turn every case into an emergency for the executive and judicial branches. The way the judiciary is supposed to work is local judges decide cases for the people in front of them. Disputed local rulings go before district or circuit courts like the one behind me. And where circuits disagree with each other, the U.S. Supreme Court weighs in for the whole nation.
which would give a lot more eyes on the situation rather than just one individual sitting in his chambers making the decision.
As Barr puts it, a Supreme Court justice must convince at least 4 colleagues to bind the federal government nationwide, whereas a district court judge issuing a nationwide injunction needn't convince anyone.
It always angers me when I see these activist judges, judges who are not elected, who decide instead of interpreting the law, they want to make their own law. And, you shouldn't go to the judiciary because you want to be a lawmaker. You should run for Congress.
And 2 men who did just that are taking action. Republican Senator Tom Cotton and Congressman Mark Meadows have introduced the nationwide Injunction Abuse Prevention Act. If passed, it would prevent lawful policy changes from being blocked by individual district court judges. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Pat, I know you've been concerned about this for quite a few years.
I'm very exercised about it because you've got one judge acting as if he can control the entire nation. As far as I'm concerned, a district court judge has jurisdiction within that area and no other. He does not have jurisdiction over the entire nation. And these guys are trying to put nationwide injunctions in place to limit the President of the United States, the Congress, and so forth. It should not be done. Clarence Thomas has mentioned it shouldn't be done. The Supreme Court should have stopped it a long time ago. But Congress can, there's a Supreme Court and whatever inferior courts the Congress from time to time appoints. That's what the Constitution says. And so in terms of the power and the appellate jurisdiction of these courts, but even the 10th Circuit, which is, the 9th Circuit, which has been so liberal, has now begun to turn and limit what some of these district court judges can do. But it's time to stop. Congress should stop. The Supreme Court could have stopped this a long time ago. Clarence Thomas is absolutely right. They should not have jurisdiction beyond the district that they are involved in. And that case that comes before them, and only those litigants at that particular thing, but not the entire nation. It's a disgrace, and it's been used over and over again to try to stop Donald Trump from doing what he wants to do. So what's happened is the Supreme Court has now said, in this particular ruling, we disagree with that district court. But again, that ruling only applies to the states in which the judge is seated, and the rest of the country is not involved. Even the Supreme Court has allowed the district judge to make a ruling, and that has not been overruled, and nor has that particular issue been litigated. Well, therefore, there's going to be a debate. You want to tell us about it?
Indeed, there is. The top 10 Democratic presidential candidates debate tonight in Houston. Joe Biden remains the frontrunner, but it is the first time he'll be on the same stage with Elizabeth Warren, who's emerged as his top challenger alongside Bernie Sanders, raising the question of how the top candidates will deal with each other and concerns about whether the party is moving too far to the left. The debate airs at 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC and could give the candidates their biggest audience yet. A tentative legal settlement has been reached over the role Purdue Pharma played in the nation's opioid addiction crisis. But it falls far short of the far-reaching national settlement the company has been trying to get for months. So legal action is sure to continue against the business and the Sackler family who owns it. The agreement would have Purdue file for a structured bankruptcy and pay as much as $12 billion over time, with about $3 billion coming from the Sackler family. The family would also have to give up its ownership of the company. Pat?
I think that it's not enough. It's costing the United States in the neighborhood of, $75 or so billion. This opioid crisis has hit state after state after state. And it's not just Purdue. The Sackler family are the ones that pushed OxyContin, and they'll still be making OxyContin. That's what's so terrible about it. They won't be stopping. They'll still be passing this stuff out. But there's several big companies that have been involved in this, and there should be a huge settlement. This is just a warm-up, but I think what they have done is nothing short of criminal, and to allow them to continue ownership of the company, just to have billions of dollars of profit from selling OxyContin and oxycodone. And the opioid crisis is real, and it's just beyond belief. Now, we turn to the Bahamas. It's a horrible crisis. It's much worse than anybody dared to dream. It's now an estimated 2,500 people that may be dead. They're listed as missing. Ephraim has more about that.
Pat, as you said, an estimated 2,500 people are listed as missing in the Bahamas in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, but the government cautions the names have not yet been checked against the rosters of people who were evacuated or staying in shelters. With that, a government spokesperson expects the number of missing to shrink, but the death toll is still expected to rise significantly. It now stands at 50, but will climb as search and rescue crews make their way through the ruins. The Prime Minister announced the country will hold a national day of prayer. And more wild weather here in the United States. 3 EF2 tornadoes ripped through the center of the nation Wednesday. At least 11 tornadoes were reported in a 24-hour period in the upper Midwest. Now, those 3 major EF2s were all in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, striking a hospital with winds up to 130 miles an hour. Hospital administrators say their staff worked courageously to get all 102 patients to safety with only about a 10-minute warning. They managed to get them all to the center of the building, and no one was hurt. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the feature film about the life of Fred Rogers, is scoring rave reviews at this week's Toronto Film Festival. It stars Tom Hanks, and it doesn't hit American theaters until November, but we've got an exclusive first look to share of the film right now.
It's a decision we make to release a person from the feelings of anger we have at them.
Fred Rogers grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and he dreamed of being a minister. He went to seminary school, and he gave people liberty to explore something deep and vulnerable about themselves.
I asked him to pray for me. I figured anyone who is going through what he is going through must be awfully close to God.
He had that amazing gift of looking at a person and seeing what that person needed, that he was going to minister to that person. And that person, in this particular case, was me.
We are trying to give the world positive ways to deal with their feelings.
This piece will be for an issue about heroes. Do you consider yourself a hero?
This movie is sort of like an episode of Mr. Rogers for adults.
When I think of Fred, I often think of him in terms of what he did every morning, which was pray and think of the people he needed to pray for and write to those people.
Cecilia Sharon, Colby Dickerson. Thank you, God.
His spoken message is simple, but the message of his life is not simple, because the message of his life is goodness in action, goodness enacted.
I think the best thing we can do is to let people know that each one of them is precious.
The film is in theaters in America November 22nd and already is getting nearly perfect reviews. Pat?
Tom Hanks is an incredible actor. He is an unbelievable actor, and he's done a perfect job with showing Mr. Rogers. So our hats off to a great movie and a great thespian.
And a great message for people
Really,
today.
amen.